Hey folks, welcome back. This is an example of a game that really floats my boat. This is Mech Engineer, and I'm not going to play it. I just want to show you something that kind of illustrates a point that I've been trying to make in the sort of gaming 4X community recently. And that point is that there is a real problem, in my opinion, at the moment with modern games sharing too many assets, and particularly in UI, right? I think that user interface is we're in a rut with it at the moment, and it seems to be, in my opinion, the user interfaces in most modern 4X games and strategy games in general are just kind of carbon copied from one another. And I understand why this is happening after speaking to quite a lot of UI people now. And I think it's really damaging for the gaming industry, and I do think that it's part of what is contributing towards this kind of fatigue that players are getting towards 4X games. Now, every now and again, a game comes up which just kind of throws that, into the bin and just does something completely different. And usually those games are made by Microsoft, right? So I'm going to have to show you Mech Engineer. This is a really interesting game. I've only just got it. I haven't been playing it for very long, so honestly, don't be looking at me to be able to show you how to play the game, because I don't know. Okay, but what I do want to show you is how it is that you can create a user interface in a game that is kind of engaging and interesting, that forms part of the gameplay, but it doesn't just carbon copy this same old boring 4X user interface that we seem to have been stuck with ever since kind of like Endless Legend, like that long ago, sort of 2010 or maybe even before. Back in the 90s, games looked like this, right? And here's the manual for the game. It's all in game. It's all done in this kind of really cool, kind of retro style. It teaches you how to play the game, but without holding your hand. Because that's another gripe I've got about games at the moment, right? The games just kind of like hold your hand through everything, and they treat you like you're, an 8-year-old. And I really hate that. It's one of the things that puts me off modern, sort of RPG games, stuff like Witcher, and that way you've just got this kind of go here now, and now go here, and now go here. It's like, let me find it out for myself, man, So this is really cool. This tells you all the components in the so what is this game? Let's just quickly look at what this game is. This game is a game where you build. It's like XCOM, I guess. You're playing on a sort of geoscape, and you set up your base location on the planet, and then you've got these kind of insects, this insect swarm, alien swarm that comes in, and it's trying to find this moving city of yours. And in this moving city, you've got the ability to create and kind of design and build these kind of robots or mechs. They're not robots. They're mechs, like in BattleTech, I guess. And you have to build these mechs in the sense of you have the kind of chassis, and then you've got to give them a reactor. You've got to fine tune the reactor so that it works in a certain way, depending on what you need it for. And then you can give it all these different modules, and you can research new modules. It's kind of like XCOM, but with an auto battler kind of combat. It's odd. It's really odd. Now, like I say, I'm not going to go into the game too much, but let me just give you I'll show you what I mean by the UI sort of becomes part of the gameplay. So here we've got to kind of we've got to test this reactor, right? So we've got an injector which we need to add. Now it does tell you where to add these things, these components. Injectors at the top here. By the way, there's a difference between the UI highlighting and telling you where to put something, so that you're not kind of like finding it all over the screen, and a mission in a CRPG where there's this kind of highlighted icon that tells you exactly where to go, like GPS. So anyway, so we've got an injector, we've got a piston in there, and these once you've unlocked more, these have different kind of effects on the engine performance. We've got different components here. We're going to put some external cooling here, which reduces heat from the environment. This is kind of, and by the way, this goes in a certain direction, right? The flow of the diagram goes in a certain way, and you can figure this out from the manual. So if we go to the reactor, I think it's here on the side. Yeah, so the system parameter displays the strength of this heat reducing as a ratio. So it goes down across like this from, I think it was yeah, from top left to bottom right, and then from right to left, right? So from top left to bottom right, and then it goes from right to left as well. So you've got these 3 different connections, like 1, 2, 3, and like that as well. And then I think you can go downwards, which is, so you can basically experiment now with putting these things in different orders, and you get different reactions out of them. So it's kind of cool because you're dragging and dropping stuff, and because the UI is kind of compact, there's not too much like busy work in it. It's quite easy to do, but you really feel like you're kind of putting these components in, and then you're sort of like checking these, you know, the cooling power, the ratio of the system, whether it's giving more external cooling or internal cooling for the weapons that you're firing. If this all sounds like gobbledygook jargon, you probably need to play the game a little bit and have somebody who's better than me at explaining it. But suffice to say, this game is really, really interesting. You get to test the engine now. So we can start the engine up, and you see it kind of goes. And these graphics are great, by the way. This is how to do like retro graphics in a really modern, interesting way. And we can start playing with the engine. These are simulating stress on the engine. So when the mech is going to be moving, when it's going to be firing, and you can just kind of, these are like four different engine stress levels essentially. So the 4th one gives you the most engine stress. And if you go too far to the stress, it shuts the engine down, look, so it stops. So you can kind of like test this thing. Okay, that looks kind of weird, right? So we've got this thing we've got this reactor going now. What we can do is we can actually bang this into a mech. So let's pull this one up, which is currently called Frog. You can close these, by the way. So, and then we're going to put that reactor into this mech. Now, this gives it a weight, and then we've got an energy class as well. There's all sorts of other stuff that we can add, right? But the next thing we might want to have a look at is weapons. So let's go to, rather than actually look at add this to Frog immediately, let's get some weapons and put it into this testing bay. And we can turn it on. And you'll see that we've got this kind of, like, this is like a target, right? And it moves up and down slowly. And then we've got this, the gun actually fires. And you'll see that the accuracy is quite low when we get out this far. But if we put it in quite close, look, the accuracy starts to improve. We've got this fine-tuning thing where we can actually fine-tune like the accuracy of the... There we go, look, we can increase the accuracy of the gun. We can just try see what it's like once it's further out. If we figure out that, like, you know, okay, after about this sort of distance, well, we're getting kind of, you know, less than 20% accuracy, we might want to say, all right, well, when the enemies are this close, then let's make sure that it's not shooting, right? We don't want to be wasting our ammunition. And so we only really want to be shooting at stuff if it's going to be hitting over sort of, like, you know, 25%. Let's just say that that's the metric you're going with. So this is cool. You can then kind of add, you know, okay, I want more power. You can try it with a different kind of, this is like testing armor penetration. So you'll see that some of these shots are going through this armor of value 3. But if we add more armor penetration at the bottom, we might be able to actually get it through to the, yeah, so we're actually penetrating 5 here now. Only a little bit, but it is going through. So you can see you can calibrate all these weapons. And you start off with 2 weapons, but you can research more. There's also you can add resources to kind of further modify these. You can kind of make like you can sort of make a shotgun. Where are we? Many shots. There we go. So this one fires like a shotgun look, and you can kind of, now you see how the accuracy kind of goes up or down depending on how you're looking at it. Obviously, as you're going to get closer, you're still going to get more accuracy, and it'll tell you how much damage you're doing. All this kind of stuff. Once you're happy with this weapon, you can throw this back into here. And then we can go back to our mech. Where are we? And when we find the weapon that we've just created, and there we are. It's this one here. Look, with the shotgun blast. So we're going to put that into here. Now this mech has got this weapon. So you can kind of see how this works, right? You build these mechs, you kind of fine tune and test them, and then you send them out into the world, and then they kind of fight against these insects. Now the combat's actually quite hard, and I'll be honest with you, I've only been playing it for about an hour and a half, right? And I lost the first battle. It was so brutally difficult. I didn't know what I was doing. The control over the mechs is quite limited. You really just tell them where to go, and then they just shoot at stuff. And it also kind of almost works like a tower defense game in that respect. But there's loads of stuff in here. There's research. So there's a research tree, and it's got a really it's got this kind of scrollable research tree, and you just kind of select stuff to research. So we started researching this reinforced frame. Okay, and then there looks like there's a decent research tree in it. And by the way, another thing that I love about this, and this is my programmer training now coming in. This whole game comes in as a Steam download of under 50 megabytes. It's about 50 megabytes, which is just so satisfying to me. It's obviously just there isn't a huge amount of assets in it. It's just really well coded and designed. Like, it's, you know, doing these kind of graphics is relatively, you know, it's not easy to make graphics that look like this, but it also means that you can get the code to do all the geometry, right? You can just use the geometry to draw stuff rather than having to download bitmaps. I don't know if this is going to be done with bitmaps or whether it's done with you know, some kind of geometric function, but it's really, really interesting. I was just really pleased to see that. The music is also really, really good. Man, I tell you, this game is really, really cool. It's completely different. I've not seen anything like it ever. Like, it's just really, really unusual. It's very, very microprose, and you know, micropros are just banging out really great games. I'm going to put this up there with something like High Fleet and Carrier Command 2 as examples of games that micropros have released recently where they're really caring about the user interface, and they're just kind of avoiding that trap that modern games seem to get into, where they've just kind of got this, I don't know, I just feel that I understand why people use stuff like Unity and you know, Unreal Engine and all that, and you know, because the asset market, you know, the asset stuff is just tempting to use, and it makes it so that the programmers don't have to kind of reinvent the wheel all the time. I understand that, but the problem is, coupled with this kind of really constrictive, generic template UI that we seem to be getting now in every strategy game, I feel that whenever I play, like, I don't know, I come to play a new 4X game, for example, like, let's say, we'll look at something that people have been raving about recently, which is the new Spellforce game, which I think is a good game, right? I think it's a really, really cool game, very good kind of RPG tactics kind of game. Don't think it's a 4X, and that game had an like kind of slightly generic kind of way of approaching those sort of games, like with as far as the UI is concerned. So the problem is with me, I'm quite aware of how I feel about stuff, and if I play something and within 5 minutes I'm bored, I'm going to ask myself why, right? So I start thinking, why is it that I'm bored of this already? And I think often it's because I don't, like, there's no exploration in it, you know? Like, I can see what everything does, obviously. It feels like the same layout that I've done a game in games before. There's a sort of subconscious thing that is pushing me away from that, because it's like, you've played this game a million times before. Even if it's a brand new game, I just think, well, I've kind of played a game that looks like this and feels like this already. Like, what is there new in this? And it's given me a real insight into who I am as a gamer, because I've realised that the exploration of game mechanics is really important for me. So if everything's laid out for you on a plate, and the game goes, now do this, now do that, and then you want to do this, and here's how to play. Like, I feel like it's insulting my intelligence, and I just really don't like it. So that's one of the reasons why you will often see me playing old, like, kind of games that look like this. They've just got weird UIs that I have to, you know, that are complex, that I feel like I have to figure out, you know, because they require some exploration. And I think that, you know, certain kind of gamers are really going to be like that. This is one of the reasons why I still love Illwinter games. And I've got friends in the community who don't like Illwinter stuff because they don't like the user interface, which baffles me completely. I don't understand it. I think that Illwinter's user interfaces are actually really well designed, particularly with all the hotkeys that they use. They're just so easy to play. I think that there's certain things, like in Dominion's selection of troops in squads is a bit awkward. I think that could be done better. But other than that, I generally think that Illwinter's just really well designed. Because the UI is engaging, because there's, you know, you've got to look at what you're doing, I feel like I'm engaged with the game, and it pulls me in. And it's funny because I talk to so many other people in the community who are just directly the opposite. If they have to put any effort into navigating a UI, and if they kind of have to engage with the UI in a way that's not blindingly obvious, they kind of like slate the game and like, oh, I don't like it, the UI's no good. And it's like, I think that there's an element to UI design that we are missing, and it's not all about ease of use. Okay, this is a game. This is not like I'm not like a guy working working a printer in a factory or something where, yeah, the UI needs to be clear, simple to use, and no messing about. This is a game, and games are about engagement, and they're about aesthetics. And I feel that UI design is really losing something in modern gaming, and I hate it. Like, and the more I speak to people about it, the more like almost like aggressive reaction I get from people when they're just like, they really don't understand what I'm talking about, or they really, react very badly to what I'm saying. And I get a lot of people saying, well, no, UI is nothing about, aesthetics is not important, or it's only important up to a certain level, or they say, I don't want to be fighting with the UI. This is not fighting with the UI. This is playing with the UI. I'm going to use a quote from, what's his name? Alan Watts, right? Alan Watts made a really, really interesting point when he was talking about kind of living life, but he was talking about the difference between work and play. And he was saying, you don't work a piano, right? You play a piano. And it's the same with a game like this. Now, it's maybe perhaps one step removed in a sense, because there's less artistry in operating a user interface like this as there is in playing the piano, okay? For someone who plays the keyboard, I can tell you. But like, there is something to that. I think that when a user interface is just too easy and just generic, it's a real turn off for me, and I won't be the only one. Like, I know I'm not old man shouting at the cloud here. Maybe that's how some of you will take this, but I really do think that the gaming industry is painting itself into a terrible corner with this really boring generic user interface, UX, whatever that means. All this kind of this jargon that they've kind of come up with, and these rules that they've started to write. Like, I've got a friend who's a UI designer, and I know another one as well. Both of them told me, we get the UI design stuff from this one book. So there's this like Bible of UI design, and I just think, man, read the book, learn what it tells you, and then throw it in the bin. To quote another philosopher, which is Bruce Lee, who said that, like, read your book and learn the techniques, and then throw it away, because you should be able to understand what you've taken from that material, and then start weaving it into something new in a creative way, rather than just endlessly copy pasting, punching out this template UI design that I just see in every 4X game over and over and over again. And I swear that it's part of the reason, it's not the only reason, but it's part of the reason why you just don't see me playing these new 4X games anymore. Like, Rob loves them, and other people at Explorminate, will happily go through all these, these kind of like different 4X games that are coming out, and they get to a certain point, and then invariably they drop them. And I'm asking you now, have a look at this, and you tell me whether you think this is a problem or not. Do you also pick up a brand new game which should be perfectly good, and then you kind of get, a few hours into it, and then you think, I've played this before, I've played this before, and it's because you have, and whether you like it or not, your subconscious mind is screaming for new sensation. As human beings, that's what we do, right? We are looking for new sensation, we're looking for new experiences. Our souls, or our minds, if you want to look at it that way, are always craving new experience. And I think if you're basically playing the same kind of game that you always play, and it's got that same UI and the same kind of gameplay, no wonder people are getting bored, and we're seeing sales and a lot of these games dropping. And then stuff like this, which is just, this is a relatively small, I think this is one developer, this is a relatively small indie game, and I mean, okay, you've not really seen me play it much, right? But go and have a look at people who have played this, and you'll see what I mean. I think Splattercat has done a decent video on this game, so go and watch Splattercat, and just check out what you think about this of Mech Engineer. It's very complex, it's very, very weird and interesting. It's kind of a management game, it's kind of a sort of strategy game, it's got kind of 4X elements. But you tell me that this is generic, and I will say no. Like, this is so different. And I'm again, now I'm going to be old man shouting at clouds, right? Shaking his fist at the clouds. Back in my day, and I was playing games in the mid 80s, okay, onwards, because I was playing games very early in my life. I was a kid when I was playing games. After a certain amount of time, I'd say about 1987, 1988, games developers had got used to the hardware that they were using, to the point where they were able to really experiment with this stuff. So about the time that Microsoft were really kicking in, about 88, I guess? I mean, they were around before that, but you know, kind of, I'd say around the turn of the decade, you know, between the 1989 and 1990, games they were really starting to experiment with user interfaces in a big way, and the early console games really pushed that as well, right? And we had so much experimentation in that decade, you know, kind of between about 88 and about 98. There was a huge amount of experimentation, and games just looked so different, and some of them had good UIs, some of them didn't have such good UIs, you know, with regards to usability, but they were all kind of interesting. And so when you bought a new game, they really kind of felt different. Do you know what I mean? They like you had to kind of explore the game, learn how it played. Part of your gaming time was spent, you know, exploring what was going on. And I think that, like, I used to teach juggling, and I know a bit about meta learning. In fact, this is something that I focused on when I was doing my degree, my cognitive science degree, which was that there is an element of engagement that's really important when it comes to not only human cognition, but also the rate at which we learn. Okay, so if you are able to engage with a thing, and you have a more sort of tactile, or let's say cognitively dense, or a higher resolution cognitive effort engaged in the activity that you are engaging in, you're going to not only learn it faster, but you're going to feel more connected to that thing that you're learning. And I think that when this is borne out, right? So when you turn on Endless Space 5 or whatever, and it's got that same UI that they've been using ever since Endless Space 1, which is the same one that they use in like all the games that came afterwards and copied Endless Space. By the way, I'm not picking on Amplitude here, because I think I do actually really like I do quite like the UIs in the Endless games, but they kind of pioneered that in a sense. It's just everyone else that's copied them, right? So, you know, you've got that kind of same thing, and you just feel like, okay, I've done this before. So you're instantly kind of pushing yourself back from the game, because you're not engaging in a way that allows you to get that kind of gameplay, those gameplay like time in, for you to be able to really connect with it. And that's one of the reasons why I like Shadow Empire so much, because I had to struggle to learn that game. It was a bit of a struggle, but it was a fun struggle. And once you've connected with something in that way, you feel like it's kind of part of you, and you take a certain pride in kind of understanding how it works. And a game like this is going to be the same. Like I've seen people complain on the Steam forum, you know, on the Steam reviews, that the UI is bad. It's like, no, this is not a bad UI. This is a wonderful UI. I wish more games had user interfaces like this, where it's thematic. It looks like everything goes in this game, right? The music is wonderful. It's got this really cool kind of down-tempo electronic stuff going on. It fits perfectly with the graphics style. The graphics are really well done. The user interface is just, look, you're clicking on these chunky buttons, dragging and dropping stuff in. There are shortcuts as well, so you can kind of like, you know, you can right click, you can shift click on stuff and add things if you want. If you don't like dragging things manually, like, there's other ways of doing it. But this is wonderful. This is what I want to see in a game, because this turns the user interface into part of the gaming experience in a bigger way than you'd get with, you know, these kind of generic strategy games that we're just seeing all the time. And I think that so many other genres are going to be falling prey to this problem as well. So anyway, I'm going to get off my ranting podium and I'll let the clouds be for a little while. I'll let them pass by, but I invite you all just to consider this and decide what you think about it. You know, maybe you think that I'm talking absolute rubbish, and that, you know, user interfaces are purely just a way of interacting with the machine, you know, with the code behind the game. Or maybe you agree with me and you think that, you know, the aesthetics of a UI and the way that you engage with it are really important. Like, if a better game really for me to use as an example of this would have been Shadow Empire, because I think Shadow Empire also has design choices in there that really make sense best when you examine them from a sort of immersion point of view. For example, the reports in Shadow Empire. Like, a lot of people go, oh, I don't like the reports, you know, it's just like, why is it all the information not more easily presented? Well, I think Vic kind of addressed that, and he gave us options to see the more critical information in other ways. But I think the reports are wonderful. They are so they are so immersive. They draw you into the game. They make you feel like a commander. This is great. This makes you feel like an engineer, you know, that's kind of like building these mechs and just looking after them. You know, there's there's pilots that you can kind of like examine. You know, this is kind of like, this is like really low key stuff as well. But look at it all. Like, it's actually really neatly laid out. This is a really good UI. This is a really good UI. And I'm going to argue with people until I'm blue in the face who say this is a bad UI. It's not. This is wonderful. This has had a lot of effort gone into it, I can tell you. As somebody who started doing a bit of game development themselves, I can tell you this has had a lot of thought gone into it. It's a really, really nice little UI, and it's beautifully designed and beautifully crafted as well. And it's all under 50 megabytes, man. Like, you know, look at this. This is how you this is your city, your walking city in the game. And I don't know much of this is doing. I've got to be honest with you in a moment. I think a lot of this is this is telling you little elements of what each kind of room in the city does, or which sector of the city does what. But look at this. This is cool, man. This is just really, it's fun to explore. It's interesting to see, and it's just all done in this wonderful aesthetic. All right, folks. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. But this is just food for thought when it comes to UI design, and I want to, invite you to discuss this in the comments, and let me know what you think. Do you think there's something to what I'm saying, or do you think I'm just being an old man stuck in the 90s, shouting at the cloud, wishing that the world was still as good as it was back in the good old days? Okay, guys, take care.